This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Colin Gray, who I refer to as the guru of making podcasting easy. CEO and founder Colin is a podcaster, international speaker, he has a PhD, and he's the founder of Alitu, an automated podcast recording and editing tool. He's also the producer of the podcast Host, one of the longest running and most authoritative podcasting blogs on the web. In addition, he also hosts his own show called Podcraft, which teaches listeners how to create better quality audio content. I personally have used the Alitu program for several years, and I highly recommend it. So let's find out more about Alitu and its creator. Welcome, Colin.
Hey, Nan, thanks for having me on.
Colin, timing is so important, and it seems like you got on the online bandwagon 12 years ago at just the right time. So tell us how this all came about.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Being in the right place, the right time, there's something pretty special about that. I think I was in education. I helped teach teachers how to educate with technology back in the day, back 2007, 2008. So it's called a learning technologist in Scotland. So one of the things that I was told to look into at the time was podcasting. Podcasting was really kind of gaining a lot of traction back then, around 2008. And so my boss said, go and look into this, this audio thing. People are listening to stuff on headphones. I don't know how it works. Go and have a look into it. So I went and investigated, and I just fell in love with the medium at the time. I just love the mix of, the personality that comes across through podcasting, the transparency, the feeling that it's just somebody talking to you personally, directly, right into your head through those earphones. And then the attention as well, like the fact that you listen for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, because you can do it in your wasted time. So I just kind of dropped deep into it and tried to find out as much as I could about it. And that really turned into me running a blog on that, which then turned into something that gained a fair bit of traction, that let me quit my job in education and start doing that full time, started working with an audio producer, started creating courses. And as you said, went into software as well at one point as well, Alitu, which helps people make their shows. So that's kind of that was the impetus for it, certainly. And it turned into a whole lot more since then.
Well, it seems like the most successful people often start their business in one area and then grow it into other areas. And it seems like that's exactly what you've done. When you saw needs over here, then you repositioned a little bit to be able to address those needs. Is that right?
That's exactly it, actually. I think content is such a great way to figure out what the world needs. If you're interested in an area, you start writing about it, you start podcasting about it, you start doing video about it, you grow even a little bit of an audience, even a few people, and suddenly they start telling you, they find a few things they like and they start telling you exactly what they like and what they want more of. And that's exactly what happened to us. That's how we grew out our content site. That's how we grew out we're 700 plus blog posts in now. And it was that told us what software to make, what courses to make, because those people that enjoy our content told us the problems they have, the biggest barriers they have. And that is where we start to look around where to create some software to help them.
Well, we'll put those links in on our website when we do your full page write-up. So you will have all the people able to see everything that you do.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So how did you get funding for Alitu?
Well, we actually built it ourselves in the early days. So we didn't take funding at all. It was all bootstrapped. We started to gain a good bit of revenue through the podcast host. So we took sponsorships for some stuff. We ran adverts. We did a fair bit of affiliate marketing as well. So we reviewed products honestly and truthfully. And the good ones, we said, go and buy this, and we get commission through that. That's how the affiliate side of things worked. And that really gained enough revenue that we could play with some experiments around Alitu and put some money into that. And once we'd sort of started with that, we did get a little bit of government funding actually along that. So the Scottish government actually gives you some match funding So you can apply for it and you have to pay the same. So they give you a certain amount and you match it as well. So it wasn't free by any means, but still that helped a great deal as well. So that was kind of the start of it, really. It was some of our own income plus a wee bit of government match funding.
Now, you said the Scottish government, so people can tell by your accent you might be from somewhere other than the United States.
Indeed, yes.
So tell us a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, I'm Scottish by birth, and I've been here all my life as well, but with a few breaks. I've lived away, lived in the US for a few months at one point. I was in Australia for a year, New Zealand for a year, other places, but yeah, I always end up coming back to Scotland, certainly. And these days I'm right up the top, right up in the north in the Highlands. So yeah, I love the country, and yeah, I escape every now and again, but I always end up coming back.
Well, I've been to Scotland a couple of times and I love it there. It's beautiful.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
So tell us, what does Alitu do that those other programs don't do?
Do you know, it's funny because in some ways it's better to think about what Alitu doesn't do. Actually, what Alitu does do is it helps you make your podcast in the simplest way possible. And what it doesn't do is give you all of the stuff that you don't need as a podcaster. Because so many podcasters end up using packages like Audition or Audacity or Pro Tools or anything like that. They're all packages designed for audio, but they're designed for audio engineering. They're designed for audio engineers who make really complex audio programs. So there's so much in those packages that you don't need. And because of that, because they're meant for professionals, there's so much in there that you have to know quite detailed audio sort of science and technical knowledge to work. So the thing that we designed with Alitu is really to take a lot of that away. Actually, it's only to put in the tools that podcasters need. So and to automate as much as we could as well. So we automate the cleanup, for example, the noise reduction, the leveling, all that's done for you. Things like adding on your theme music and fading it into the voice. We can automatically add your music at the start and the end and do the fade from the music into the voice. And then the editing part is just designed to be super simple. And it does everything a podcaster needs, but no more. It doesn't need all the bells and whistles. So that hopefully that gives you a kind of an idea. Even when we got into the recording side of things, we do call recording now as well. And that's just designed for podcasters. It's not got video in there because we didn't really want to add that in as a distraction. Some people ask us for that, but we're like, no, we're an audio company. We're a podcasting company. We keep it just to the audio side of things. And that's what we stick to.
Well, I've edited using your program many, many, many times, and it's extremely easy to use.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Great. So tell us about the podcasts that you do yourself.
Yeah, sure. We've done many over the years, many that we've done for a while, and many we've abandoned. And as any podcaster, you'll know yourself, Nan. You've probably tried and stopped many a thing, and then stuck with some and not stuck with others. And there's a season for them all, isn't there? Like the early shows that we did, we started with Podcraft. Podcrafts are how to start a podcast, how to run a podcast. And that's the one we've done the longest, actually. It's Matthew and I run that together these days. Matthew's part of the team here at the podcast host. And I really enjoy that because we just kind of get on there and have a chat about, something that we love, which is podcasting. It's great fun. But there's other ones, like I've done one on mountain biking for a while. That was called Mountain Bikes Apart. We did one called Hostile Worlds, which is one of my favorite actually, but that was a really short season because it was almost an audio drama, but to teach people science. So it was me and Matthew actually exploring space, pretending we're up there, but kind of try to teach how space works at the same time. So there's a bunch of them. And Matthew runs a few, like he's got one called Organic Life, which is about organic farming, and one about gaming too. And I ran a gaming one years back too. So yeah, it's almost too many to count. How many do you have these days, Nan?
Well, I've interviewed over 250 women just on my one podcast.
Yeah.
But I had 4 shows and I just wasn't able to concentrate enough to promote it. So I deep sixed 3 of them and now have just one, TrailBlazers Impact Interviews, the one that you're on, that I really promote.
Yeah, that's what it usually comes down to, isn't it? You've got all the enthusiasm in the early days and you start all sorts of stuff. And then you're like, yeah, this is the one that's taken off. This is the one I enjoy the most, or this is the one that has the biggest sort of goal. So yeah, it's a good approach, I think.
What do you think is the biggest reason people listen to podcasts?
I mean, I think there's a few things that come into it, but I think the thing that separates podcasting from, let's say, the other mediums like blogging and video, I think it is that real personal one-to-one connection, really, that really shows you what a person's actually like. It shows you their real personality. Like blogging is great. You can write blogs, you can make them quick, and people can read them very quickly, but even the best writers struggle to get their personality across and really connect with people with the written word. It's quite a difficult thing. You have to be a really good writer to do that. And then in video is a funny one because you can get a bit of personality across. You can show a bit of yourself. You can show, yourself, your voice, your appearance, but there's something funny about your average video channel, your average video that you create. That's like, there's a bit of a barrier between you and the person. It's the screen almost, or it's how you create it. It's funny that. Whereas with audio, you've just got these headphones in your ears. There's just somebody talking into your head, and it's just like this one-to-one connection. It's funny, so it's great. And then you combine that with the attention side of things, where you have somebody talking to you for hours. Like you can talk for hours because you can be walking the dog, cooking your dinner, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's that combination. It's the personality, the connection, and the attention, like the length of time.
What advice do you have for people who want to start a podcast, but really they don't know what topic to choose?
Well, I mean, I think the best podcasts tend to have, a really solid goal. Somebody starts their show and they decide, right, I'm going to talk about this thing that I'm very passionate about, but this is actually what I want to get out of it as well. And it might be that you actually just want to build a community. So it might be that you want to, you have a hobby, you play board games, and you don't want to make any money out of it. There's no question about monetizing at this point. You just want to meet people who's as passionate about this thing as you. But other people, they run a business, or they work with clients, and they want to actually attract people around that. And I think when it comes to it, it's got to be whether it's the topic really has to be based on that goal. It has to be based on what you want to get out of that show. Because when it comes down to it, podcasting is great fun, but there are hard times. There's times when you're busy. There's times when actually you're on this treadmill, just trying to keep a thing going out every single week. And it's only that goal, that end goal, that can keep you going, really. Whether it's the community that's powering you, or whether it's the clients that you're serving, or that kind of stuff. So I think it comes down to that, like what topic is going to serve those people that help you achieve that goal. And the best way is always to ask them. It's to ask them the question. It's to get in there and just ask them what they want you to help them with. What's the biggest problem they're dealing with right now that you can perhaps help with, and answer those questions for them.
Well, the thing I like about it is that you can do your podcasts. You then can show them at a later time because you can schedule them all out. I'm going to Europe for a month.
Excellent.
Very shortly.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting ahead on all of them. And then they're all teed up, and all I have to do is just make them live on a scheduled date.
Yeah, that's always good, feeling prepared like that, isn't it? Ahead of time. It's great. But a batch recording serves you well.
True. So if somebody is thinking about starting a podcast, where do you think they should begin?
I think one of the things that people often miss is that planning side of things. So once you have that goal in mind, the three things that I always think about, there's three things that really come into it: is the problem, the solution, and the uniqueness. Okay, so you've got your topic. Hopefully you've kind of aligned that with your goal. What do you want to get out of this? Why are you starting a podcast in the first place? You've got that goal. Then what is the problem you're going to solve to help these people, to help you achieve your goal? And that's usually, like I said, easy enough to find just by talking to some people, getting that community. You might know some people. It might be you. You might be part of your target audience, and fine what the problems are. And then communicate that solution. Like, what is that solution going to be? Now, that's usually obvious. You answer the question, you provide your expertise. But it's the third part that is often the thing that makes the planning side really, really worthwhile, because the uniqueness, like what makes your solution unique? Because there'll be other people trying to answer that problem. There'll be other content out there trying to answer that problem. But how do you make your solution unique? And there's all sorts of different ways to do it. It could be something to do with the way you make the podcast. It could be the format. So like there's a politics show where you're answering people's questions, and it's like a quick fire format. It's like a 3-minute answer every day. Or it's a round table. You get on 4 or 5 experts every single week. Or you break it down and it's actually going out there, and there's a segment where you go and interview people in the shopping center and you get answers from the general public and stuff like that. Format, how you actually put the show together can be a uniqueness. Or it could be something about you. It can be your angle on it. So I'm going to do a politics show, but I'm only 16. I'm still at school, and therefore I'm going to do it for school kids. So there's an angle on it based on your, your demographic, I guess. Or it could be the psychographic. It could be the way you think. Your angle is actually it's politics for people who are in a certain part. So in the UK, politics for Labour Party members. So it's more the way you think rather than who you are and what what you're like, that kind of thing. So that's what I think is the big thing. It's like finding that uniqueness. We've actually got a blog post on the site that goes through all of the different ways. There's like 25 or something different ways that you can make a podcast unique, in my mind, that people could go through. So if anyone wants that, I could certainly give you that link for the show notes, Nan.
Okay, just go ahead and say the link.
Oh yeah, well, okay, I'll make up a short one. I'll put it under thepodcasthost.com /unique, and I'll make sure that goes direct to that podcast, to that blog post.
Okay, that's great. Well, the age-old question is, how can a podcaster with, say, only about 30 downloads per episode, how can they make money?
Well, that's one of the great things about podcasting is you don't need a huge audience for it. One of the most wonderful things about podcasting is it goes back to that combination of, personality and attention, because people are with you for so long, like hours at a time, listening to your voice. That builds so much trust. So even if you've got 30 people listening to your show, there's a good chance you could convert like half of them into, let's say, customers for your product. So if you're a coach, you sell a $1,000 a month service where you really talk to people in detail. You spend quite a lot of time with them. You could get like 10 or 15 people out of that 30, literally, to actually spend time with you and spend money with you. And you don't need a big audience because you can sell a reasonably expensive service because you put a lot of yourself into it. Or you create something that's just really valuable that, you can sell for that. And you can sell to a large proportion of your audience because of the trust and because of the engagement that you develop. This is obviously presuming that you actually deserve that trust, like you're actually giving good value and you know what you're talking about. That's a given, but as presuming that is true, you can actually serve those people really well and get, you can make a decent income by helping this really small audience.
What about sponsors, Colin? I know in the beginning, everybody was looking for a sponsor, but they usually want bigger numbers, don't they? Or is there anybody out there that just does sponsorship for smaller type number of episodes and 10,000 or something?
Yeah, no, you're right. Sponsorship does tend to look for the larger numbers for sure. But I mean, I would argue, and I often do, that sponsorship is a pretty non-optimal way to monetize your podcast anyway. You're kind of giving over your authority to somebody else. It's fine. I don't grudge anyone that does it. If you can do sponsorship well, then go for it. But if you can monetize through your own methods, whether it's selling your own products or services, generally that can be one of the best ways because it is like monetizing your own, you can get sort of 100% of the income for that. You monetize your own expertise, but even things like, a Patreon page where you give out bonuses to people and you kind of develop your own community that way, rather than just sort of giving away your equity to somebody else and talking about other products and just having a big turnover in sponsorship as well. Like you need new sponsors every month kind of thing generally. Although sometimes you can get longer deals, but I would suggest it's not the best way to monetize for most podcasters anyway.
Now, one of the things that I've used that's your product is the Alitu Podcast Host Academy. Now, I've used that a lot when I was just starting out. So tell us a little bit about that, how you developed it, what you have on it, that type of thing.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it was great to have you in there, Nan. And I mean, that's a good example of that was us trying to monetize our content. And it was a good way to do it actually in the end, because we found people enjoyed our content. So we created much more in-depth versions of it, putting in videos and adding in coaching as part of it as well. So we spend an hour in there in the chat room every week so that people can come and talk to us personally. That's a great way to start to monetize what you do. And you can start small too, like one course and then an hour of your time each week can be enough to start to generate a recurring income. But yeah, we just created courses around podcasting. We've got everything in there from how to launch through to some technical stuff if you're interested in that, like the gear and editing techniques and things like that. And then like presentation skills and growth and monetization, like how to grow your show too. So yeah, we put as much as we can in there to help people run a successful podcast.
Well, video is becoming very popular. Do you think it's going to take over that podcasting space?
Unpopular opinion, but I think no. I don't think it will. I think you probably got that impression for the reasons that I love podcasting earlier on. Like I think one of the massive powers of podcasting is the fact that you don't have to watch it, that you can wash the dishes or do your ironing or walk the dog or drive to work and listen at the same time. I think that is why it's so popular with perhaps a smaller group of people than video, but actually those people are so much more into it because it gives them such a wonderful thing to do in that otherwise wasted time. So I think video is a decent complement, but I don't see it, certainly I don't see it taking over, and I don't see the kind of video version of podcasting becoming as popular. I mean, I think YouTube does that, doesn't it? It's like, it's less, they do subscribe. You could argue that YouTube is almost just the video version of podcasting anyway, because people can subscribe and go, and it's just not as on the go as podcasting is. That's the power of podcasting. It's so much more on the go, do it anytime, any place.
I like that, the on the go. Yeah, that's a great description. If anybody's thinking of starting a business, just any kind of a business, what are three tips that you'd give them?
Oh, good question. I mean, I actually think it comes down to a very similar starting point to a podcast. I think a podcast can be treated exactly the same as a business almost. It's like, what is the business going to solve? What is the problem, solution, uniqueness again? It's like, what problem is this business going to solve? What's the solution that you're offering in the business, and why is it unique so that it stands out from other businesses? So that's a big part of it. I think going beyond that, I often hear the advice, like, you need to jump in with both feet, take the risk and, quit your job and go and jump in. That's not what I did. And it's not what most of the people I know that now run good businesses did. A lot of them hedged. They're actually, people think of people who run their own businesses as big risk takers, but actually most of the successful ones are actually big risk avoiders. You know how to hedge that risk. I cut down my time at my old job a day at a time. So I cut from 5 days to 4 1 year, and started spending a day a week on the business. And then 6 months in, I'd started to generate enough to drop another day. So I went down to 3 days. And then another year, actually, I took on a bit of client work that covered me for maybe 1 or 2 days. So that then I could run the business 3 to 4 days a week. And that was what got me into it. It was a real kind of hedge as we go and kind of ease your way in. And that's maybe kind of, it sounds like boring, risk averse advice, but I think actually that is one of the best ways to do it. And I think the other bit of advice I often hear is like how focused you have to be. The book, The One Thing. Have you come across that, Nan?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's quite, I remember it going round and there was a lot of people talking about it. Who's the author again? I can't remember. But anyway, the whole thing is around, you need to just do one thing. You need to be so focused. But in the early days, when I was starting my business, I was running about 5 or 6 things at that point because I didn't know which one was going to work. Like you never really know. You can have a great idea. You can do all the planning and it still doesn't take off. And I ran 5 or 6 different things over a year or two and played loads of experiments. And then I actually just doubled down on the one that did the best. And that happened to be the podcast host. And it was great because it was one that I think I enjoyed. It's the one that I had the best chance of enjoying the most, actually. One of them was a mountain biking one, so I might have enjoyed that quite a lot too. But that's another bit of advice that I find a little bit off, because I don't think you should focus that much, because you can just go down the wrong path for far too long and end up having to start from scratch again. So yeah, That's probably what I would say.
Well, you can experiment a little bit more if it is a side hustle. You know, you're
That's
not
true.
counting on it for your income, and then you get panicked and think, what am
Yes.
I going to do?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with a bit of scatterbrainedness in the early days, though, and try a few different
Yeah.
things, see what sticks.
So, what do you think that are the biggest challenges today in starting a business? You know, you've got to know social media. That's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, for
Any
sure.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges to me actually is it's probably around the fact that people almost think that it's so much easier because it's so easy to reach people online and it's so easy to just email folk and social media folk and try and get your customers that way. And I think actually it makes people a little bit almost ambivalent to real human contact. And I think one of the challenges that people have is realizing that actually you need to get on the phone and you need to go out there and talk to people and you need to meet people in person. And there's a lot of what I have achieved, of the little that I've achieved, a lot of it was to do with going to conferences like where I met you, Nan. And actually a lot of the connections that I have and a lot of the friendships that I've made and a lot of any of success that we've had has been due to actually going and meeting people in person. And I know a lot of people starting and running businesses that potentially aren't doing as well as they could, or even aren't doing well at all because they just sit behind a computer the whole time. So there's something around that. And this is coming from a definite introvert as well. Like I would be happy to sit behind my computer and just talk to people that way most of the time. But I do enjoy going to a conference, and the things that come from that in-person contact, I think is just so important. So I think that's one of the challenges, that's kind of almost disappearing a little bit. And not just because of COVID, I think just because of technology and the ability to reach out to people without going to things.
I think that's probably true. Well, I've got to ask this question. What are you thinking about creating in your next dream?
Yeah. Do you know what? I have a lot of, I mean, I spend a lot of my time in front of the computer, in front of the microphone and digital things. And it means that I really value actually just making things with my hands. So I've got a few hobbies where I just make things, and I love just getting out and doing things in the garden or building a shed, or I try to make sure I'm still relatively practical. You know, if the world ends, we need to be able to go out there and chop a tree down. My computer skills will be useless in the apocalypse. So I try and keep that stuff up. So if I ever got out of podcasting altogether and I had the freedom to choose, I've always loved the idea of being a carpenter, just building things with wood, like nice things with wood, like building nice wooden furniture, stuff like that, and being involved in the whole process, like going out and choosing a tree and just milling it all out. There's something very attractive about that, I think. So yeah, probably something with wood or just making things in a natural way.
Well, Colin, it's been so much fun talking with you. Have you got anything else that you'd like to add?
I think just to say thanks to you too, Nan, for like all the support you've given us over the years too. I mean, you came along and tried out a lot of our products, and we're just great. So yeah, it's great to speak to you, and hopefully give something back to your audience out here too.
And then give people your URL, just alitu.com.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to try out our podcast maker tool, so you can get a 7-day free trial. It's over at alitu.com. That's spelled ALITU.com. And then if you want to get our guide, probably our best place to start is our How to Start article on the podcast host. That's over at thepodcasthost.com/start. That's all entirely free and should take you through the whole process.
That sounds tremendous. Well, thank you so much. It's been so much fun talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on.